Hey everyone, and welcome back to Tech Bytes Central. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Okay, good. Today we're looking at something that's been, well, kind of blowing up online.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Vibe coding, they're calling it. You sent over some really interesting stuff. Simon Willison's blog post, that Forbes article, even the Wikipedia page popped up. So we gotta, unpack this. What is it? Why are people so hyped about it? And what does it even mean for, how we build software going forward?
Yeah, I see what you mean. All the stuff you sent, they all look at this idea of using natural language and AI to build software, maybe moving away from classic coding. Kind of makes you wonder what software development will even look like down the road, right?
Seriously. Okay, so vibe coding, just the name. I don't know, it's catchy, right?
It is.
And it looks like Andrej Karpathy, well, he kind of kicked this whole thing off back in February with that post on X, right? Saying something like, just give in to the vibes. Embrace the exponentials. Forget the code even exists. Forget the code even exists. I mean, for anyone who's ever spent hours, days even, trying to find one tiny bug, that's, I don't know, kind of mind-blowing.
Right. It really is. And he goes on to talk about, these crazy powerful LLMs like Cursor Composer with Sonnet, and even voice tools like Super Whisper. We barely even need to touch a keyboard anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. And his examples really paint a picture, right? Imagine just saying, hey, decrease the padding on the sidebar by half, just plain English, and the AI does it. Or just hitting accept all on all the AI suggestions. Or even just taking an error message, dumping it in the AI and letting it figure out the fix. It's wild.
So it's almost like you're just describing what you want and the computer just does it, magic.
Kind of, yeah.
And Karpathy himself, he's obviously a hardcore programmer, right? But he's seeing this as a fast, fun way to get something up and running. He said, not too bad for throwaway weekend projects.
Yeah, exactly. A quick way to prototype an idea. But here's where Simon Willison comes in, right?
Yeah.
Remember that blog post you sent? He's all for this new vibe coding thing, but he's also like, hold on a second. The definition is getting kind of fuzzy. People are calling anything with AI and code vibe coding. But Willison says, no, there's a specific meaning.
Okay, so what's his take?
For him, vibe coding is when you build software with an LLM and you don't look at the code, at all. That's the key difference.
So it's that forget the code even exists part of Karpathy's quote, but taken to the extreme.
Exactly. Willison's saying if you use an LLM, like an assistant, it writes the code, you check it, test it, understand it. That's not vibe coding. That's just, smart software development. It's using the tools.
Right. It makes sense.
He even has this rule. He won't commit any AI-generated code unless he can explain it to someone else. Knowing you'll probably really appreciate that principle, right? It's still about human understanding. We're still responsible, even with all this fancy AI.
Absolutely. That's kind of the whole point of this show, right? Getting to the bottom of things.
Totally. Okay, so we kind of have a handle on what vibe coding is, at least according to these different views. But why is it such a big deal? Why is everyone talking about it?
Even Willison's blog points out that it's been popping up all over the place. New York Times, Ars Technica, all the big names.
Right, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And both Karpathy and that Forbes article, they both keep coming back to the speed. You can prototype something so fast with this approach. It's got to be appealing, right?
Yeah.
To go from idea to something working, in hours instead of weeks.
Definitely. Who wouldn't want that?
And the Forbes piece, they really highlight how this could, make building software available to more people, not just hardcore programmers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, remember Kevin Roos's experiments in the New York Times? He built these little software for one apps, like that Lunchbox Buddy thing. For someone like you, if you have a specific need, a small project, you could just whip something up without needing to spend years learning to code.
Software for one. I like that. Makes it sound so personal. And did you see that stat from Y Combinator? Apparently a quarter of their winter 2025 startups, something like 95% of their code base was AI generated.
Wow, that's huge. That really suggests a shift, right? Companies are using this to build fast, build efficiently.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And even for, experienced devs, Willison points out that playing around with vibe coding can be super helpful just to see what these LLMs can actually do, where they're amazing and where they fall short. He's done a ton of these experiments himself. Plus, it can make it easier for people who are curious about coding to get started, right? If you can just describe what you want and see it working, even if it's a little rough around the edges, that initial learning curve might not seem so daunting.
That's true. But, okay, let's be real. This all sounds amazing, but there's got to be some downsides, right? I mean, just trusting code you haven't even looked at. That seems a little, well, risky.
Yeah, for sure. Willison and that Arsectic article, they both bring up the big red flags here. Like, what if there are bugs you don't see? What if there are security holes that someone could exploit? And what happens when you need to update the software, down the road? If you don't even understand the code, how can you be sure it's doing what you want it to do?
Good point. And remember in the Forbes article, they talked about how Kevin Reese had that issue where the AI was making up fake reviews.
Uh-huh.
That's a little scary, right?
Right.
Even with code, these models can just make stuff up. We need to be careful, even skeptical.
Definitely. And all the sources agree. Vibe coding, like the pure no review kind, is probably not the best choice for anything serious. Like anything that goes out to the public, anything with money or security involved, the risks are just too high.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, right? Ars Technica talked about how one AI coding assistant, it basically refused to generate code for someone. It was like, nope, you need to learn to program yourself.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it's like even the AI knows its limits. And for you, someone who really likes to understand things, to not just skim the surface, the idea of just skipping the review, it probably goes against everything you believe in, right?
For sure. That human element, the ability to think critically, to reason things out, it's still so important. And, this whole thing makes you think about what it means to be a programmer, right? Like, how does this change things?
Yeah, totally.
The Forbes article, they talk about how vibe coding could shift things away from actually writing the code and more towards, guiding the AI. Like, you're describing the vibe, what you want the software to do.
I like that, like setting the overall feel.
Yeah, exactly. Like that example they give, creating a chemical reaction simulator. You just feed the AI data, the name of the process, and it builds it. But you're still there. You're the expert. You're guiding the process.
So you're not writing the code, but you're still in control. You're shaping the outcome.
Right. And for businesses, this raises a lot of questions, right? Like, are they comfortable using code that no one on their team really understands, even if it seems to work?
Yeah.
We might see so much more code being generated, but testing, quality, security, all that stuff, it's still crucial, maybe even more so.
Absolutely. And what does this mean for software engineers? Like, what skills will they need in the future? If the AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, the actual coding, what are humans good at?
Right. You'd probably need to be really good at, high-level design, communicating your ideas to the AI, and testing, making sure the AI didn't mess anything up. The Forbes article touches on this, suggesting that, experienced engineers who have a broad understanding and can spot potential problems, they're going to be really valuable in this new world.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's say vibe coding is here to stay. How do we make it, better, safer, especially for people who are just starting out, who might not fully understand the risks?
Good question. Willison talks about this. He mentions sandboxing environments, like Claude artifacts, as a good starting point. It's a way for beginners to, play around, generate code without worrying about breaking things or, accidentally leaking sensitive data.
Okay, so like a safe space to experiment.
Exactly. And he also says we need better tools that make vibe coding more productive and, most importantly, safer. Like better ways to understand what the AI is doing, maybe visualizations or, simpler explanations.
Yeah.
That would be great, especially for someone like you who really values understanding, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he gives one piece of advice that I think is really important, especially for beginners. He says, before you share anything you've built with vibe coding, get a vibe check from a more experienced engineer.
That's smart. A second opinion can go a long way, especially from someone who knows what to look for.
Absolutely. So, okay, this has been a really fascinating look at vibe coding. To sum it up, it seems like we've got this new, super interesting way of building software, all thanks to AI. And it's definitely got some awesome potential, making development faster, making it easier for more people to build things.
Totally. But it's so important to remember the difference between, pure vibe coding, where you don't look at the code at all, and a more responsible approach, where AI is your helper, but you're still in charge. You're still checking things, testing things, making sure everything works right. And especially for important projects, that human element, it's still super important.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. As AI becomes more and more involved in building software, blurring the lines between human and machine, what does it even mean to be a programmer? Like, what skills do you need? How do you approach things? It's a question we're thinking about, right? This balance between speed and making sure things are done right, it's everywhere in tech.
It really is. And conversations like this, these deep dives, they're so important for exploring these ideas.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into vibe coding here on Tech Bytes Central.
It's been fun.
And as always, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all this? Any questions? Let us know. And until our next deep dive, take care.